The story of the Golden State Killer is one of the most chilling and disturbing chapters in American criminal history. It begins in the early 1970s in California, when neighborhoods seemed safe, families felt secure in their homes, and the idea of locking every window and door at night wasn't something most people considered necessary. That sense of comfort was shattered when an unknown predator began stalking suburban communities. He crept silently through neighborhoods, studying families, learning their routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What started as a string of burglaries soon turned into something far more sinister. At first, the man who would later be known as the Golden State Killer was referred to as the East Area Rapist. His attacks began around Sacramento in 1976. He would break into homes late at night, wearing a mask and gloves, armed with a weapon and a flashlight. Victims reported that he seemed to know their houses better than they did. Sometimes he would disable porch lights, unlock windows days before the attack, or even move personal items around to create a sense of confusion. Once inside, he tied up his victims, usually with shoelaces or items found in the home. His early attacks were against women who were alone, but soon he began targeting couples. He had a cruel routine. He would bind the male partner, place dishes on his back, and threaten to kill them both if he heard the plates rattle while he assaulted the woman in another room. The community was terrified. News reports spread, but police struggled to find leads. He was careful, meticulous, and always one step ahead. By the end of his reign as the East Area Rapist, he had committed over 50 sexual assaults. Fear swept across California. Couples began sleeping with weapons beside their beds. Families installed new locks. Dogs were kept inside homes for protection, and entire neighborhoods organized to watch patrols. Despite this, the attacker remained uncaught, and his crimes only grew darker. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, the rapes escalated to murders. This phase of his crimes earned him a new name, the original Night Stalker. Families were slaughtered, women and men brutally killed in their own homes. The attack stretched across California, from Sacramento down to Southern California. Police departments struggled with communication and resources. Many didn't realize that the same man was responsible for these seemingly unrelated crimes. At that time, law enforcement databases weren't interconnected the way they are today, which allowed the killer to move between jurisdictions and remain undetected. Investigators noticed patterns. The intruder would often enter homes quietly, sometimes days before the crime, and leave behind strange signs: doors unlocked, items moved, strange phone calls made to victims before or after attacks. He seemed to revel in psychological terror, not just physical violence. Victims described his voice as chilling, often whispering threats in the dark. Some remembered him crying softly after assaults, muttering to himself about his mother or saying words that made no sense. These eerie details gave investigators a glimpse into his disturbed mind, but no clear path to his identity. The list of crimes continued to grow: over 100 burglaries, more than 50 rapes, at least 13 murders. Yet the man responsible seemed to vanish into thin air. By the mid-1980s, the attacks suddenly stopped. No one knew why. Had the killer been arrested for another crime? Did he move away? Or had he simply chosen to stop? For decades, speculation continued, while victims and their families were left without justice. The case became one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. The name Golden State Killer wasn't even coined until 2013, when true crime writer Michelle McNamara began investigating the case. She pored over old files, interviewed detectives, and connected dots across decades of police work. Her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, brought renewed attention to the crimes and put pressure back on investigators. Tragically, Michelle passed away before the book was finished, but her research inspired both the public and law enforcement to push harder for answers. The breakthrough finally came with the rise of forensic genealogy. In 2018, investigators used DNA from old crime scenes and uploaded the genetic profile to public genealogy databases. By tracing family trees and identifying relatives, they narrowed in on one man, Joseph James DeAngelo. He was a former police officer who had served in California during the 1970s. At first, the idea seemed almost unbelievable. A man who had once sworn to protect the public was the same one who had terrorized them. Surveillance was placed on DeAngelo, and DNA samples were secretly collected from items he discarded. The results were undeniable, a match to the Golden State Killer's crimes. On April 24, 2018, Joseph DeAngelo was arrested outside his home in a quiet Sacramento suburb. Neighbors were shocked. They described him as a grumpy but unremarkable man, someone who rode motorcycles, yelled at people about his lawn, and lived a quiet life with his family. But behind closed doors, he was hiding the darkest secret in California's history. In court, the weight of decades of horror came crashing down. Victims who had lived in fear for more than 40 years finally faced the man who had stolen their peace, their loved ones, and their innocence. During hearings, survivors gave powerful victim impact statements, describing how their lives had been shattered and how the shadow of the Golden State Killer never truly left them. Some recalled the sound of his footsteps, the beam of his flashlight, and the chilling threats whispered in the dark. Others described the lifelong trauma, nightmares, and broken trust that followed them for decades. In 2020, DeAngelo pled guilty to multiple counts of murder and kidnapping, admitting to crimes he had committed across California. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, he accepted a sentence of life in prison without parole. During the trial, he sat silently, sometimes pretending to be frail, but many victims believed it was an act. He was 72 years old when finally unmasked, decades older than the young man who had once prowled California's suburbs with terrifying precision. The case of the Golden State Killer is not just about one man's evil, it's about the resilience of communities, the persistence of law enforcement, and the power of modern science. It demonstrates how justice, no matter how delayed, can still arrive. The use of forensic genealogy opened a new chapter in crime solving and has since been used to crack other cold cases once thought impossible to solve. Today, Joseph DeAngelo sits behind bars, where he will spend the rest of his life. The victims and their families finally have answers, though the scars remain. For California, the memory of those years of fear is still fresh, a reminder of the predator who stalked in the night. For the rest of the world, the story of the Golden State Killer serves as both a warning and a testament that no matter how long it takes, the past will catch up to even the most elusive criminal. The Golden State Killer's reign of terror may have ended, but his story remains one of the darkest, most fascinating, and most haunting in American history. He was a man who blended into society, a father, a neighbor, even a police officer, yet he carried with him a secret life of unspeakable violence. It is a chilling reminder that monsters do not always look like monsters. Sometimes they live right next door. Even now, years after his arrest, people continue to study the case. True crime enthusiasts, criminologists, and psychologists alike. They ask questions that may never fully be answered. What drove Joseph DeAngelo to commit such horrific acts? Was it his background, his psychology, or a desire for control and power? Why did he stop in the mid-1980s? And how was he able to live a seemingly normal life for decades after? These mysteries add to the case's enduring fascination. For the victims, the nightmare is over, but the pain will never completely fade. For the world, the Golden State Killer remains a reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows, the importance of perseverance in the pursuit of justice, and the incredible power of science to reveal truth even decades later. This is the legacy of the Golden State Killer, a legacy of fear, pain, survival, and ultimately, justice.